Most people believe that wealthy people got there because of opportunity, the right time, the right family, the right luck. But here is what that belief misses entirely. There are people born into wealthy families who lost everything within 10 years, and there are people born with almost nothing who built significant wealth from scratch, not because luck changed, but because they changed how they thought. The difference is not circumstance. The difference is a mindset, a specific cognitive frameworks, the mental models that determine what you see as possible, what decisions you make automatically, and how you respond when things go wrong. Think of it like operating software. Two computers can have identical hardware, same processor, same memory, same raw capability. But if one is running outdated software, it processes information slower, misses opportunities the other machine catches immediately, and crashes more often under pressure. Most people received their financial software in childhood through parents, school systems, and cultural environments that were themselves not designed to produce wealth. The 9 shifts we're about to cover are, in effect, a software upgrade. You do not need to change who you are. You need to change what you automatically believe to be true about money, about yourself, and about what is possible. Let us begin. Most people use the phrase, "I can't afford it," constantly, and do not notice what that phrase does to them. Robert Kiyosaki, in one of the most important personal finance frameworks of the last 30 years, made a specific observation about this. The phrase, "I can't afford it," ends thinking. The moment you say it, your brain stops looking for a solution because you have just told it there is no solution. Now compare that to asking, "How do I make this work?" That question opens thinking. Your brain, which is fundamentally a problem-solving system, immediately begins searching for approaches, resources, and possibilities it was not looking for before. The language is not cosmetic. The question you ask yourself determines which part of your brain activates, and here's where it becomes practically significant. Wealthy people do not ask, "How do I make this work?" because they already have the money. They ask it when they do not, because the habit of asking the question is what produced the money in the first place. Think about the difference in behavior this creates over a decade. Person A encounters an investment opportunity they cannot immediately afford. They say, "I can't afford it," and move on. That opportunity either passes or they never build the habit of seeking solutions. Person B encounters the same opportunity. They ask, "How do I make this work?" Over the next weeks, they explore a payment plan, a partnership, liquidating something underperforming, an income stream they had not yet tried. Sometimes they find a way, sometimes they do not, but every time they ask the question, they build the mental muscle of solution seeking. Over 10 years, Person A has made hundreds of comfortable decisions that kept them exactly where they were. Person B has made the same number of decisions, but each one stretched their capability and opened new paths. The wealth was downstream of the question. Here is a practical implementation. For the next 30 days, every time you notice the thought, "I can't afford it," replace it with, "How could I make this work if I had to?" You do not need to act on every answer. You just need to keep the question open. Most people were taught, explicitly or implicitly, that the way to earn more money is to work more hours. And this logic makes sense on the surface. More hours means more output, means more pay. But it contains a ceiling that most people never examine. You have a fixed number of hours, you have one body. No matter how efficiently you use your time, you cannot work more than approximately 16 productive hours in a day. And most people, maintaining a sustainable quality of life, have far fewer than that available. Now compare that to what wealthy people do differently. Warren Buffett once said, "If you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die." That statement is not about passive income as a trend or a side hustle. It is about a fundamental shift in how you think about earning. A salary is linear. You work 1 hour, you earn 1 unit. Stop working, stop earning. Your income is capped by your time. A system, a business that operates without your constant presence, a portfolio of assets that generates returns, intellectual property that earns royalties, or a platform that monetizes your audience, earns whether you are working or not. The goal is not to stop working. Most wealthy people work extremely hard. The goal is to shift the nature of what you are building so that your work creates systems, not just outputs. Think about it this way. A plumber who charges $120 an hour is trading time for money. A plumbing company owner who has 5 plumbers working for clients across the city earns from their time, not just their own. Neither is wrong, but only one of them can scale. The shift happens in how you evaluate every decision. Instead of asking, how much does this pay per hour, you begin asking, does this build something that earns without me? This single question, applied consistently, redirects your effort from tasks to systems, and that redirection, over years, is the single most common pattern in the financial histories of self-made wealthy people. Practical implementation. Look at your current income sources. Write down how many of them would continue producing income if you stopped working for 90 days. If the answer is 0, that is your most important financial data point right now. The goal this year is to add one income source that continues without you. Most people manage money in the same sequence: earn, spend, and if anything is left, save or invest. This is the standard sequence, and it is the reason most people reach retirement age with less than they expected. The wealthy use the reverse sequence: earn, invest first, then spend what remains. George Clason, writing in The Richest Man in Babylon, one of the most consistently relevant financial texts written over a century ago, called this paying yourself first. The principle is disarmingly simple. Before you pay any bill, any obligation, any lifestyle expense, you allocate a fixed percentage of income to an asset-building position. Most people intellectually understand this. Few people practice it because the lifestyle expenses feel more urgent than the future. But here is what the data actually shows. Someone who takes home $3,000 per month and invests $300, 10%, from the first day of receiving each payment before any other expense and maintains that discipline for 20 years at a conservative 7% annual return ends with approximately $160,000. Someone who earns the same $3,000 and intends to invest what's left at the end of the month, because lifestyle expenses always expand to consume available income, often ends with close to nothing. The difference is not income, it is sequence. This principle is not about the percentage, it is about the habit and the priority signal. When you pay yourself first, you tell your financial system and your own psychology that your future is the first obligation, not the last consideration. Everything else adjusts. People who practice this principle find consistently that they adapt to spending slightly less than they planned because the option was removed before the decision was made. And 20 years later, the asset base those automatic investments created becomes the foundation of everything else. Here's a practical implementation. This week, set up an automatic transfer, however small, that moves on the same day as every income payment to a separate account labeled Assets Only. The amount matters less than the sequence and the automation. Start at 5%. Raise it as income grows. Most people believe that the path to more is doing more. Working harder, putting in longer hours, developing more skills, delivering more output. This belief is not wrong, it is incomplete. Because there is a fundamental limit to what one person can produce, and the gap between what one person can produce and what wealthy people accumulate is not explained by effort. It is explained by leverage. Leverage, in its most practical definition, is the use of a multiplying force to produce more output than your direct effort alone could create. There are 4 primary forms of leverage available to anyone building wealth in this era. Financial leverage, using borrowed capital to control more assets than you could purchase with only your own money. This is how real estate investors build portfolios worth 3 times their actual cash investment. People leverage, building a team, hiring specialists, or creating partnerships where other people's skills and time extend your capacity. A business owner with 5 employees does not do 5 times the work. They create a structure where 5 people's effort produces results none of them could have achieved alone. Systems leverage, building processes that run without your constant input. Standard operating procedures, automated pipelines, documented workflows. This is how a business becomes a company. And media leverage, and this one is newer and enormously relevant right now, creating content that continues distributing value after you produced it once. A video you record today can educate, attract, and convert viewers for years. That is leverage on your time that previous generations simply did not have access to. The self-made wealthy person's defining question is, how do I build something that multiplies my effort rather than simply extending it? That question, asked at every significant decision point, will redirect resources away from more individual effort and toward more leverage. And that shift over 5 to 10 years creates the kind of wealth accumulation that confuses people who are still working harder instead of working with multipliers. Here's a practical implementation. Identify one task you currently do manually that could be systematized, delegated, or automated. Build the system or make the hire. The leverage return on that investment will exceed the initial cost, in most cases within 6 months. If these frameworks are changing how you think about money, subscribe right now, because every video on this channel breaks down the exact systems and mindsets that build real wealth. Simply, clearly, no shortcuts. Let us continue. Most people make financial decisions in response to circumstances. A bill arrives, they figure out how to pay it. A market drops, they decide whether to panic or hold. An opportunity appears, they scramble to evaluate it under time pressure. This is reactive wealth positioning, and it is expensive. Wealthy people make most of their important financial decisions in advance, when there is no pressure, no urgency, and no emotional interference. They write their rules before they need them. If the market drops more than 20%, I'd buy more. I do not sell. That decision, made in a calm moment, costs nothing. Made in the moment of a market crash, surrounded by news headlines and emotional contagion, it is nearly impossible to execute. A fixed percentage of every income payment goes to assets, regardless of what I feel like spending that month. That decision, made once and automated, produces consistent results without requiring daily willpower. I do not make any significant financial decision within 48 hours of receiving the information. That rule, applied consistently, eliminates dozens of costly, impulsive choices per year. The difference between reactive and proactive financial decision-making is not intelligence, it is architecture. It is the practice of building the decision system before the decision arrives, so that when emotion is high and clarity is low, the system makes the choice. This is also why wealthy people frequently seem calm in financial crises. It is not because they are not affected, it is because they already know what they will do, because they decided before the crisis arrived. Practical implementation. Write down 3 financial rules today that you will follow regardless of circumstance. They can be simple. I will not make investment decisions the same day I hear about them. I will allocate X% of every income payment to assets before any expense. I will not sell an asset during a market decline unless the fundamental reason I bought it has changed. Write them, date them, keep them visible. Most people's relationship with financial risk is governed by fear. And this is rational. Loss is painful. Uncertainty is uncomfortable. The idea of making a wrong decision with money and living with the consequences activates deep psychological resistance. But here's the problem. Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economist, demonstrated through decades of research that humans experience losses approximately twice as painfully as they experience equivalent gains. This means that the fear of losing $1,000 is psychologically twice as powerful as the excitement of gaining $1,000. That asymmetry drives the financial behavior of most people. They hold cash because at least it's safe. They avoid investments because what if it drops? They miss the biggest opportunities in markets, business, and life because the fear of downside is louder than the signal of upside. Wealthy people are not fearless. They are fear-aware. They understand the psychological asymmetry Kahneman described, and they build systems to counteract it. They do not rely on being braver than other people. They rely on knowing that when fear peaks, opportunity is often highest, and they have pre-decided to act. In 2008, when the global financial crisis produced the most fear in a generation, a number of investors made the most significant wealth-building moves of their careers, not because they knew the market would recover on a specific date, but because they understood that fear-driven mass selling of quality assets produces prices that rational long-term investors benefit from. Buffett's famous principle, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful," is not a personality trait. It is a practiced cognitive override of the loss aversion asymmetry that governs most financial behavior. The opportunity-based mindset does not dismiss risk. It evaluates risk clearly, with numbers, not emotions, and makes decisions based on probability and time horizon, rather than fear and feeling. Practical implementation. The next time you feel strong financial fear, whether about a market move, a business decision, or a money choice, stop. Write down the actual worst-case scenario in numbers. Then write down the realistic base case, then the best case. When you see the range numerically rather than emotionally, the fear usually contracts significantly. Most people relate to the economy primarily as consumers. They see products, services, and opportunities primarily as things to buy, use, and experience. Wealthy people relate to the economy primarily as producers. They see the same world through a different lens, one that constantly asks, how is value being created here? Could I create it? Could I distribute it? Could I own a piece of it? This is not a personality type. It is a habit of perception. A consumer watches a popular YouTube channel and thinks, I enjoy this. A producer watches the same channel and thinks, this creator is solving a problem for a large audience. What problem am I positioned to solve? What is the distribution model? How does this generate revenue? A consumer enters a successful restaurant and thinks the food is excellent. A producer enters the same restaurant and thinks the margins on this model, the systems required to produce consistency at this volume, the scalability. Could I build something like this? The producer identity does not eliminate enjoyment. It adds a layer of analysis to every interaction with the economy, a constant question, where is the value and how close am I to the creation side of it? Over time, this identity shift redirects attention, conversations, relationships, and ultimately capital toward the people who build things rather than only buy them. The practical expression of this shift is simple. Every time you spend money on a product or service, ask yourself one question: could I be on the other side of this transaction? Not as a judgment, as a data point, because every dollar you spend is evidence of a market, and markets are where wealth is built. Practical implementation. For the next week, every time you make a purchase, ask, what problem is this solving for me? Is there a version of this problem I could solve for others? Write down anything that comes up. You are looking for patterns. Repeated purchases often signal repeated pain points that represent market opportunities.
Most people understand compound interest intellectually. Very few people feel it viscerally enough to change their behavior. The reason is timing. Compound growth is largely invisible for years, and then it becomes undeniable. The psychological challenge is sustaining the behaviors during the years when nothing visible is happening, before the inflection point. Albert Einstein reportedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Whether or not he actually said it, the principle is accurate. A relatively small amount, growing consistently at a fixed rate over sufficient time, produces results that feel mathematically impossible to someone who only thinks linearly. Here is the concrete version of this. $1 invested at 7% annually, the approximate inflation-adjusted historical return of broad market index funds, becomes $2 in 10 years, $4 in 20 years, and $8 in 30 years. Not because anything dramatic happened, simply because growth applied to a growing base produces nonlinear results over time. Most people never experience this because they interrupt the process. They pull the investment for an emergency. They respond to short-term market movements. They spend the return rather than reinvesting it. The wealthy person who builds real wealth over decades almost never attributes it to a single spectacular decision.
They attribute it to decades of not interrupting the compounding. The shift from short-term sacrifice thinking to long-term multiplication thinking is the recognition that the most powerful financial action available to most people is simply not stopping. Continuing to invest, continuing to build, continuing to hold through cycles, long after most people have changed course or given up. The compound mindset does not require brilliance. It requires patience, consistency, and a deep enough understanding of the math to believe in it even when you cannot yet see it. Practical implementation? Open a compound interest calculator and input your current monthly investment amount, expected return rate, and 30 years as the time horizon. Look at the result. Then look at what happens if you double the monthly input or add 5 years to the timeline. This exercise makes the invisible visible and is the most effective way to rewire short-term sacrifice thinking into long-term multiplication thinking.
There is a phrase in wealth-building circles that has been attributed to various sources, but holds consistent across almost every financial autobiography ever written. Your net worth is directly correlated with your net work. This is not about events, business cards, or social media followers. It is about the quality and density of relationships you have built with people who have knowledge, resources, opportunities, and other networks that are different from yours. Most people build their lives largely within one social circle: school friends, family, colleagues in the same industry. These relationships are valuable, but they typically share the same information, the same opportunities, and the same limitations. Wealthy people deliberately and consistently expand into new relationship circles, not transactionally, but generously and over the long term. They give knowledge freely. They make introductions without requiring immediate return. They show up consistently in networks where the density of value is higher than their current circle. And over years, those relationships begin to produce what no individual effort could: introductions to opportunities before they are public,
knowledge from people operating 5 steps ahead of where you are, partnerships that multiply what either party could do alone, and capital, because trusted relationships are the primary channel through which investment capital and business deals actually flow in the real world.
Let us bring all 9 shifts together. Most people were taught how to earn. The wealthy learned how to think. From "I can't afford it" to "How do I make this work?" From trading time to building systems. From spending income to investing the margin. From working alone to leveraging multipliers. From reacting to circumstances to architecting decisions in advance. From fear to opportunity. From consumer to producer. From short-term sacrifice to long-term multiplication. And from individual effort to the compounding power of a quality network. None of these require you to be born into wealth. Every single one is a decision, a practiced shift, a new question you begin asking and then begin building around. The gap between where most people are financially and where they want to be is not primarily an income gap. It is a thinking gap. And the most important thing about a thinking gap is this. It is the only type of gap you can close entirely on your own, starting today with no additional resources, no special access, and no permission from anyone. The people who built wealth from nothing did not do it by accident. They did it by thinking differently about what was possible, about how value gets created, and about what they owed their future selves. Now you have the 9 shifts. Subscribe, because every week on this channel, we break down exactly the systems, the frameworks, and the decisions that produce real financial growth. Simply, clearly, without shortcuts. We will see you in the next one.